Next, we have the honor of having with us Shri Jukta Manabendra Mishra, former GM RBI, to address the topic Banks in Odisha, Partnership with Industry and Trade. We have Shri Jukta Manabendra Mishra with us, who has had a career, who has been a central banker for 37 years and looked after the state's financial system for 5 years as general manager and officer in charge of Reserve Bank of India in Sikkim and Odisha. He served in 7 states covering all the zones of India, an alumnus of JNU, New Delhi, with MA and MPhil in economics. He had managerial responsibility across key functional areas in both regional offices and central office of RBI. He also served on deputation and additional director of institutional finance in the state secretariat of the then newly created state of Chhattisgarh. He was a member of faculty for 6 years in the Officers Training College of RBI in Chennai. Sir, I request you to kindly assume your position and deliver your address. Thank you, sir.
Dignitaries, some of my mentors on the dais and my colleagues, and the discerning audience comprising industry, bankers, faculty members and other institutions devoted to making Bikasit Odisha by 2036. I congratulate Utkal Chamber of Commerce for this maiden venture. I am totally uninitiated to the game of cricket. Totally uninitiated, so I didn't know what is the role of a opening batsman. So I was wondering how to start, but because of delay, we had to stop our session with Madam Guite. She has made my job simpler. So I'm happy that I became the second speaker. It would have been a tough thing for me to manage that. We'll start with a small video. Okay, I can correlate. I'll start with a common issue. This is not directly related to my topic, but this will agitate us for the next 2 days. How do you do regional economic development, particularly in Odisha context, so that we become Bikasit Odisha by 2036? Of course, you have to mobilize savings. Traditional sources, banks, because they intermediate, they collect the savings and borrow. They act as the contact point between the persons having surplus on hand and the person who desperately needs for industry, trade or commerce. Other one is small savings. Small savings goes to a central corpus, National Small Savings Fund, from there states borrow, but the cost is higher. And the terms and conditions are different, and it is a debt for the state. So bankers have a key role because they mobilize, they intermediate the savings, and that is our major source for development. How do we deploy it? If it is in financial assets, benefit may go to some other market, some other place. If it is real asset like real estate, then my state gains. But if it is real asset in gold, may or may not my state gain. We have to see where savings is deployed and in what form. If there is building infrastructure, factory set up here or real estate, then immediately there is proportionate local generation of income and some employment opportunities. Because banks also act accordingly, because they have the advantage of cross-subsidizing. The savings deployment should be market-driven or policy-driven. Governments has different inducements to bring savings to particular sectors, the needy or the priority sector. It should be incentive-driven or autonomous, means the saver has to decide on the rate and return trade-off, where he should deploy it. Now coming to government, other than revenue expenditure, one major role of the government is enhancing CapEx, capital expenditure. How do you finance it? By generating revenue surplus, which rarely doesn't happen. Most of the capital expenditure is financed by debt, because governments, whether the center or federating units, the subnational entities, they don't have enough wherewithal to generate so much revenue surplus so that they can finance part of the capital expenditure out of that. But debt is a major burden for my next generation, what we call intergenerational equity. So you cannot have debt unlimited or for very long term, because you are passing on the burden of development to the next generation. That's why FRBM Act was brought in 2003, and the tagline was how to protect intergenerational equity. Accordingly, the goals are to be fixed by the center from time to time. Subject to that, what banks can do or what the trade and commerce can do, that so that the surplus is properly deployed, or we find out ways to garner surplus which can be used for rapid economic development. Now, what are my sources? Next. though I have put it banks as the first, please remember our initial source of financing, we had small and medium small enterprise at that time, was the Central Act of 1954, State Finance Act. Banks were non-existent, they were entirely in the private sector. They were the harbinger of progress. They provided funds for local development. For whatever reason, they have now not the major source, so that later on, the banks, particularly after nationalization, they are the major source of finance for commerce and industry. But when I say major source, it is either to start it off in the initial stage, or for expansion, or for scaling up. For both the situations, they need it. Then non-banking financial corporation, 16 of them are existing, registered within Odisha, all are category B. Then development financial institution. To fill the gap, we thought of this, that we should have all India and state level development financial institutions. Each is created by a separate statute with a separate mandate, and generally to cater to the particular segments. They are not so universal in nature. Their borrowing portfolio is generally for particular segments. Banks have a rather more universal portfolio. Sorry, I have to look to this mobile just to correlate that. It's not visible. Then recent one, of course, is venture capital fund. I am told that 3 of them are operating Odisha. Capital Markets Limited has an office in Odisha also. Then private equity, then P2P. P2P lending became popular up to a point. You know, as regulators in RBI, we allow things to happen fast so that innovation takes place. Then suddenly we realize, based on complaint or based on our own assessment, it is time to regulate them. So, as you know, P2P eventually will be regulated like an NBFC. Because even though there is no contact between borrower and lender, it is a portal, acting as an intermediary, there is misjudgment of loan, or there may be information asymmetry, because of which the borrower may ultimately lose. And what legal and other wherewithal he has to recover. So it has to be regulated. So P2P is not going to be my immediate and easy channel in days to come. Crowdfunding. I had the occasion to do a mentoring session in Startup Odisha. You know, Odisha has, that is part of the MSME department of Government of Odisha. They have a huge campus behind this TCS building in InfoCity. So I attended 2 lectures, what they are doing. The problem with most of the startup is they thought, I borrow from friends, relatives, do some crowdfunding, start a business. The crowdfunder is not actually stakeholder. So you become very enthusiastic, and finally you start from the scale up itself. You should have a frugal finance, start on low scale and try to expand it and put your own equity in, so that whoever is giving you money has a stake in it. So they go on very ambitious projects and finally mess up, and by the time they realize, approach the bank without credit history or proper cash flow statement, banks are already, they will look the other way. So most of the starters have this complaint that banks are not financing, because banks are very structured institutions. They have to first protect the interest of the depositors whose money they are lending. It is not their own money they are lending. So they have a very elaborate appraisal system and documentation, all these things. So startup units are not happy with that. Why I am mentioning this, most of the, even the startups I met there in Startup Odisha during my mentoring session, didn't have this basic, they just want some crowdfunding or P2P funding which they will start. And after that they face problems. And a happy thing about Odisha is I hear from this chamber that 3 SMEs, small and medium enterprises, have gone for IPO now, initial public offering. That's a healthy sign. Okay. In fact, I asked Manoj, when I was associated with curating this program also, I had several sessions with Manoj Pusti, that why don't you bring them in the next second day just to share their experience, because the new avenue, our colleagues and members of the chamber should know more about it. All this domestic, then we have an external commercial borrowing. You may be knowing that just a week back, RBI has started reviewing this, how to make external commercial borrowing more related to your own financial. Limits should not be universal, and it is going to be more relaxed. But there is a risk because of the change in the rupee price in the external commercial borrowing. Subject to that, this change is available. Having said that, let us have a view about what is the mosaic of financial system in Odisha, what institutions are playing and active here, and how do we benefit from them. Next. Yes. We have mostly all types of categories of institutions are already existing in Odisha. You have public sector bank, private sector bank, then you have one foreign bank, Standard Chartered Bank existing here, and quite a large number of branches they are having. Then we have RRB after merger, Utkal Gramin Bank and Odisha Gramin Bank merged. In fact, they are having now 979 branches. The number of branches will exceed the Premier Bank, SBI's number also very soon, because they have large number of branches, they have come together. Small finance banks, 7 of them are doing well here. One good thing about SFB is, from the SLBC returns I found out, their credit deposit ratio is 157%. Of course, they are not able to mobilize much deposit here. Most of them are in the earlier avatar of NBFCs. But they are lending. They have lending opportunities there, but they are not able to mobilize much deposit. So that is why their credit deposit ratio is 157. One of them, of course, is planning to become universal bank. Now RBI has opened that some of the SFs, subject to certain benchmarks, can become a universal bank in due course. Cooperative bank, we have about 348, Odisha State Cooperative Bank. My emphasis here is all categories of structured, regulated, long-term, stable, financially sound institutions are already existing. When you talk of partnership of trade and commerce with banking system, first of all, you have to see, is there any particular category, institution, or a niche institution which is required for Odisha is absent here? No, they are already here. Because in my last two slides, I will tell you what is the positive things of our partnership and what are our areas where we should focus. That is, in the last two slides, we will see. But presently, as far as physical existence, the structure of financial system Odisha is concerned, all the leading institutions are already existing here. Banks, non-banking financial companies, and development financial institutions also. To capture this point, my next slide is about the access point. What is the access to individual, trade, commerce, and government from the financial system in Odisha? 1st of June on 2025, we have 6,000 odd branches. Rural branches are almost half of it, 3,226. Semi-urban branches, 1,644. Urban branches, 1,313. MSME specialized branches, 416. All of them are not ab initio specialized branches because RBI has allowed 60% of your turnover, your credit portfolio is related to MSME sector. You can redesignate yourself out MSME branches. That was to facilitate that because setting up ab initio new MSME branches is a very tough thing. You need specialized staff, other infrastructure for that. That is why this number is, sorry, this. In PowerPoint, in a mobile, has a lot of power, no point. It misses the point, but power is there. That's the only difference. Then we have banking outlets. This includes branch, BC agents together. Now, number of BCs, 40,105. Now, my point is we have physical branches, 6,000 odd, 41,000 BCs. Then why we needed more bank and AMO bank in Odisha? Means upgrading customer service center with some franchise arrangement with a nearby branch so that he doubles up as a bank, but actually it is not like a bank because it doesn't have that authority to operate like a bank. Then ATM 7,602, clearing houses 43, financial literacy centers 30. This financial literacy center is at the district level. Then literacy center, this centers for financial literacy at the block level. This is a new concept. This is operating as a education channel, awareness channel at the block level, but run by the NGOs, finance sector related NGOs on franchise basis. But district level it is run by the LDM and that lead bank of that district. Then Rural Self-Employment Training Institute, RCT, 30 of them, each district has one. Now between 4 banks it is distributed. Now some of the positive indicators, we are conventional indicators, Mr. Panda was also mentioning that. As on March 31st, because June will not be a very correct indicator because only 3 months are over. Year end, as on March 31st last year, credit deposit ratio is 75.05. Private sector lending is 92% of targeted amount. Whatever private sector lending target was there in the annual credit plan. Then, roughly 62% of adjusted net bank credit, and annual credit plan achievement is overall 95%. Whatever way, but mind you, this achievement is 90%. Despite that, there is an incremental SCP. Actually, we never do zero-based SCP planning. Whatever was there last year, we add 15 to 20%, partly under instruction from the Department of Finance Service. This NABARD works it out, and then it is released as a state focus PO sometime in the middle of July. So even the 15 or 20% incremental SCP is there every year. Almost 100% of it we have achieved. In agriculture, more than 100%, 102% we have achieved. Now, why I am saying, when you talk of partnership between trade and industry and banks, let us see whether banks, their supply side is strong, they are already existing, and they are doing this. Now we have to come to the demand side, whether there is unfilled gap, or we have not able to generate right demand. Because it's Odisha 2036, you may have to change the character of borrowers also, and character of borrowing also. and see how it is deployed. It is just not by lending banks it is going to be achieved. We have to have a different model. Some of these intricate points from my experience I will share in the next 2 slides. It will be interesting. Experiential learning. In 2001, I'll bear with me, I have to rush through because my other speaker and mentor is waiting for me. I was additional director in institutional finance in the government of Chhattisgarh in 2001. Government wanted to have a cooperative sugar factory in a place called Kawarda. Banks were not willing to lend. Since I happened to be from RBI on deputation, the government persuaded me that you please persuade the banks. I know this logic is not going to work. They wanted to produce ethanol as a byproduct of sugarcane processing in that factory and have a commercial value for that and sell it and make good whatever is the revenue side deficit. At that time, ethanol, the word was not had. So we are ahead of this concept a quarter of century back, 2001. Banks didn't come, the cooperative was not formed. The cooperative has to be formed either separately under Cooperative Society State Act, and the state was a nascent stage, newly created in 2001. Sorry, 2000. I went there in 2001 for a couple of years. So this didn't work. And today, what is ethanol? Banks are ruling over each other to lend to this sector. So sometimes some ideas are ahead of time, or the state government was not able to sell this without guarantee and without the cooperative being formed. How the banks will commit their money for a activity whose major part will be ethanol production, for which even technology was not available, and from that sale outside the state, this loan is going to be mostly repaid. So banks were not convinced, but scenario has changed today. Today we are much into it because that is accepted, and maybe within 2 years, petrol ethanol ratio will be 20%. Now, captive power plant. You know, the new states start with a lot of innovative ideas. They said you can have any factory here, banks will finance it. You can have your own captive power plant because Chhattisgarh has a lot of coal. It's mostly thermal power plant. Then, but a small unit, once you have a captive power, you will produce a lot of power, energy, but you will not consume it. So what will do with that surplus? Because there is a minimum size of that power plant. So that surplus you can sell. Where you will say, you can sell to any state by using my transmission wires, means state government's transmission wires. They cannot set up transmission wires for thousands of kilometers. So you can sell outside by using my transmission wires and pay me what they called wheeling charge. But what we missed out? All the states surrounding Chhattisgarh were power surplus states. So they are required to sell to Rajasthan and Chandigarh. Imagine the wheeling charge. So bank said we will not finance. Government said what is your problem? We are guarantee. This is where this disconnect is there. The banks confronted us because I was from RBI, I had to see both sides, and I also took some interest in how to clarify things. Banks said there is no buyer, and the production cost here may be low, but the wheeling charge plus is almost double. Who is going to buy it? Then how will you repay? So these industries which wanted to set up their some greenfield projects there, they came back to the state that you sell us power at a reasonable rate. But what state says, I am pioneering this idea, you have your own captive power plant. This doesn't work actually. This homestay. The homestay is a very interesting topic. Just 4 days back, our Honorable Deputy Chief Minister Madam has announced something for Odisha. I was in Sikkim, there in interior place. You know, homestay is this tourist comes to see nature in its pristine purity and your culture in its pristine purity by staying with you. It has to be home, stay in a homely atmosphere. But banks will lend, what do we need? In a very interland, some 500 kilometers from Siliguri, deep inside the sub-Himalayan tracks, you have to have TV, some this, proper toiletry, all these things. But banks will lend as a personal loan, P segment loan, with certain conditions at a higher rate. Because activity is not an industry, and in the National Industrial Classification it is not mentioned. But mind you, in National Industrial Classification, there is a power to state to give to declare certain things an industry. So for 2 years, I persuaded them to Commerce and Industry Department and Tourism Department. One of you come forward and issue a gazette notification, homestay is an industry. But between two departments, there was no meeting ground. So in our empowered committee on MSME meeting, elsewhere, with the Commerce and Industry Department, we broached it. That didn't work out actually. Because then they have to, once they notify the industry, they have to register it, a priori registration and regulate it. So this got delayed. And this tourist was coming there on a personal basis, not as homestay. And the homestay owner, that poor fellow, very simple, in the deep in higher altitude of that sub-Himalayan range. I have gone to that place called Darab, wonderful for homestay. They were doing informally and getting P segment loan from the bank at a higher cost. Had the state intervened, it would have been easier. And imagine how many units would have been benefited. As during inaugural session they were saying, maybe the Chamber of Commerce, we have to come forward and to dispel this fear and connect it actually. It's not a big thing for the state government, it is very, very much empowered. Now what our Deputy Chief Minister Madam has announced is not actually homestay. There will be government assistance for young people with certain conditions, Aadhaar card, all this, that. There will be 450 homestays, creating 800 beds for this hinterland of Odisha. Government will give some assistance. But you have not declared it as a homestay. You are actually going to have dwelling units as neighborhood of these people. You are going to have dwelling units. My own house is not upgraded as homestay. The tourist is not going to. There is a fine difference. Once he stays with me, he gets the original touch or taste of my culture, my food, my area, my nature, my surrounding. There is a risk to me also. He stays as part of my house. So this has to be escalated to that level and declared as an industry, and many people will get job, employment. Banks will come forward to lend as one of the industrial activities. Because this national industrial classification, I have seen our trade bodies have not gone much into it. Now, about a month back, Government of India has announced they are going to recast it because some of the activities are not covered by that. But they are the upcoming activities who have a direct and proportionate contribution to local employment at least. Bank financing versus SFC financing. In one of our outreach programs, one young boy came after the end of the session, cried before. I said, what? There is something called Sikkim Industrial Development Corporation, SIDCO. I have filed an application there. It is sanctioned because they don't have funds. Banks have enough fund to lend any time. But state government, when they lend through any agency, any of their PSUs, they should have fund for that. He is waiting for 3 years. Already has leased in a house for a small shop. He paying lease for 3 years, but he is not getting money. But somebody has misguided him that you take from State Finance Corporation or SIDCO, something like that, state level finance company, owned by, operated as a financial PSU by the state government, you may not have to repay it. With that false hope, you know, that impression. When I explained, you come to a bank, bankers are here, you get loan within 2 days. What is your problem? And you are paying rent and how much cost, overhead cost you have borne. Because of this disconnect, sometimes we don't know how to choose the right institution. Like our CJ madam was telling, you sign the conditions, then you realize that you have already agreed to many things which was not required. So sometimes the chamber can step into that, or our banker friends in our outreach program, we can clarify what is the right type of institution approach for our type of requirement. It is good that now RBI used to do some outreach programs on town hall meetings. Now these lead district managers, please, your members at the district level, ask them to get in touch with the lead district managers are conducting that program, outreach program. RBI was doing town hall meetings on MSME alone. They are doing on all aspects, including all the government sponsored schemes. To get in touch with them and take their guidance. One scheme was launched by Sikkim, our banker friends, and we all, government of Sikkim, for 2 years we struggle how to combine subsidy, back-ended, PMGP concept, and popular representative concern for a startup scheme. It is like this. Popular representatives recommend the applications, Commerce and Industry Department will vet it, send it to the banks. Banks have to independently appraise it, whether this is viable. Once the sanction is there, government will put in that particular designated branch up to 20 lakhs as the something like margin money, but to be kept in an escrow account, to be eventually utilized for the loan repayment part. That means 80% is the loan repayment burden for that part. So this worked well because subsidy is not given upfront, it is given as back end and safely in the escrow account of the branch. But what we missed out, we allowed many items for activities, almost all allowed under PMGP. And you know, in a tourist place, most of the people, young boys who have not gone for higher education, they quickly change over to drop their studies and they go for a taxi driver. But now, then final number of taxis turned out to be more than the number of tourists on a day. So that scheme was very well conceived, but without specifying the activities. Here this idea I have broached when I came to Bhubaneswar in 2018 with, at that time, Additional Chief Secretary Gupta ji was there, MSME, SESA. He said, no, maybe the view has slightly changed within the government now. We are here to rehabilitate and place the, we will not go for any new enterprise. Any subsidy, anything going for new enterprise, that on a large scale, on a vast amount we don't have, we cannot do it. But later on, there is now, the Startup Odisha, when I interacted with their his CEO, he said we are now thinking on that line, how not to give subsidy upfront, back end, earmarked like this, so that some startups come and they feel assured that the loan repayment burden is not entirely mine, and it is getting vetted at so many things. The project will also be viable, not purely an outburst of his own commitment. Fifth State Finance Commission, as in charge of RBI, have here interacted in 2018. You know, we have a lot of discussion about why banks are not opening branches in the rural area, hinterland. One of the suggestions by the commission was that Rajiv Kalyan Kendra, please, one of that, it's there at the panchayat level, part of that can be lent out to a bank to open a physical branch, because that overhead cost is more, because the business turnover is much less there. This was accepted by the bank. You know what happened actually? Common service centers redesignated as Mo Bank, now Amo Bank. They are doing 100 different jobs, like downloading election exam results, getting downloading certificates, so many other jobs on a fee based. So the banking portion of transaction he is not giving priority. Plus he is not also authorized to do all the banking business. So what we wanted, a bank who is willing to go to the hinterland, but the overhead cost is high, you make available the Rajiv Kalyan Kendra in Odisha for opening his branch. So at least one major cost is taken care of. What I am saying, original idea, this we have suggested as a Fifth State Finance Commission, accepted by the government, but it got diluted like this. So now, in fact, I asked SLU's, now banks are willing, that is available, we will go to hinterland. It's good that this technical flaw is giving a pause also. Now, last week, the homestay establishment, I have explained, has been homestay establishment scheme for 5 years by Government of Odisha is announced, but it will be setting up new dwelling unit with the assistance of the government. Now, MSME, 54 MSME clusters were identified. Then 6 already approved by the Government of Odisha, and only 4 have become operational. Just 4 days back, the news has come. OSME, Odisha Assembly of Small and Medium Enterprises, under their patronage, that 4 clusters are going to come up, but we should have more of it. Now, the important part of our discourse, that is, what are the positive things of our partnership between trade and commerce and banking system in Odisha. Major expansion of brick and mortar, around 200 branches are accessed. Mind you, this is also under some compulsion. This government, which many other states have done, for empanelment of banks to keep the surplus fund, they are floating fund with banks. One of the conditions that you should have that many minimum brick and mortar branches. So one medium-sized bank with whom I have an also personal account, they have opened some 50, from 4 it has become 54 within 2 years. So that is a happy sign. And then Department of Financial Service insisted, we have identified villages having certain population, you open some branch there, then respective LDMs allotted to different banks as per the lead district arrangement. 14 of them were identified, fully opened, and 11 second round identified, also being opened. So branch expansion is taking place in a particular pace. Then as a result of our partnership, SCP is almost 100% achieved, MSCB 94% achieved, PMGP more than 100, public sector, PSA is around 70%. But here I have a catch. When I was serving in Chhattisgarh, private sector advance was 87%, and everybody was making merry out of it, bankers and the government. I put up an internal note to my SAS Finance, where are they lending then? These are mandatory things. Private sector lending has a more welfare objective actually, not exactly economic surplus generation. Where is productive commercial lending? Then whole thing was recast and this debate was shifted. Because they were very happy with that. They thought they are lending to private sector, means they are concerned with that. But the news states needs money for setting up industries, MSMEs, and employment generation. What you call commercial lending or productive lending. So that was not happening. So here 70 is reasonably good. We should not raise the target more than that. Overall banking system NPA is only to 3.39. EDP, that is expansion and development of digital payment ecosystem. All these designated savings and current accounts opened up to 2023 have got at least one of the 4 digital payment modes, AEPS or UPI, anything, or mobile. This we have achieved. For the recently opened accounts, 89% we have achieved. This is a good thing, because digital payment enablement means Government of India, connectivity, BSNL, SLBC, bankers, chamber, all have to come together. So it's a glory for our partnership that Odisha was fully digital in this and got a certificate 2 years back. For the recently opened accounts, it is being done. Mind you, these recently opened accounts are necessarily in the hinterland. Newly opened branches in the rural. They are not in the prime area of Cuttack and Bhubaneswar. So it will need more time actually. Recently opened accounts in the hinterland means recently opened branches in the far-flung areas with some connectivity problem. So this is partnership. Now last one is where we should have some focus. Startup financing. Startup as a partnership or LLP is not picking up. Most of the startups are self-proprietors. and of their own fund they are doing, because they say if we become LLP or partners, then we go to a bank, we are not getting loan. So, but that cannot be a sustained thing. It is very unfortunate that even Startup Odisha, privately we discuss, you need not quote me outside, success rate is only 10%. What is going on? The physical part, the technology part, the design of the project, or the financial closure is not correct. So they are feeling discouraged. So banks have to come forward first as a hand-holding, counseling, then out of monitoring. Without mass scale actual startup taking place, unemployment problem Odisha cannot be solved. One more POSCO in Kendujar is not going to solve it. Mind you, all these heavy industries are automated from day one. It is not Rourkela steel plant in 1950s, which generated some trickle-down effect, some employment around. We have to go for MSME in the large scale and a major component of that startup. Then bankable activity specific to Odisha, as I already mentioned in a passing, with reference to National Industrial Classification. In fact, I would request my chamber members, please read that and give your suggestions now. That is being recast now. Government of India is recasting the National Industrial Classification. Many of our activities are not listed there. Unless it is listed, the bank cannot lend it. Bank at best can lend it again as a P segment. That is not going to solve it. More and faster recovery to OPDR Act. Some 2,198 cases are pending under Odisha Public Demands Recovery Act 1962. Because the local administration collect, they are a little reluctant to invoke the provisions of PDR, and it drags on. If there is no faster or full recovery, what is the choice for the bank? It will go for compromise or OTS. That is an enabling state act. We are not getting full benefit of that. On this, of course, Chamber should talk to state government also why OPDR Act provisions are not invoked, and if invoked, why resolution takes so much time. Some 2,198 cases as of June 30th is pending. Banking in hinterland I have already mentioned. We need more of brick and mortar branches that we have to going. CD ratio 70, but below 50% 3-4 states. But here also we have to take into account certain, like Deoghar, there is no lending opportunity, but there is a deposit is there. Sambalpur, Mahanadi Coalfields has put up huge cash with, luckily they are parking there itself, not in another district. So these districts cannot raise their CD to a beyond a point, but Sambalpur even now has come up to 70%. Earlier when I was holding charge here, it was only 38%. And MSME, we have discussed out of it only 4. Of course, Madam will explain more about what are the financing opportunities on that and more specific to Odisha. These are, last 2 points are just for our information. Udgama, that is unclaimed deposit, gateway, access to information. For information, it is M actually. 1.84 trillion rupees is lying with banks, also with RBI, because we had one scheme, Deposit Education and Awareness Fund. I was associated with when the scheme was devised in 2012-13. I was in Central Office RBI. It says RBI also returned the money to the bank even though it has come after 10 years of lock-in period. If the claimant comes, claimant himself is not coming. So it is lying with RBI, it is also lying with bank. Of course, what the money which has come to RBI is partly going for awareness program, but that claimant is not coming forward. So Honorable Finance Minister, as Union Finance Minister said, my money, my right. That campaign last week they have started. Then I talked to some of the Manoj and some chamber members, the company accounts and privately our own children in many accounts, money is lying. Please, it's just that you can go to Udgam portal, file it, and with some 2-3 parameters it will be traced, or you can directly, if you already know, you can go to your bank. Check clearing, some glitches are there. From T+1 we have moved to T0 from 4th October. You lodge a check. On continuous basis, you will go to the dry bank. The image will go, not the physical check, because there is check transaction system. And after 3 hours, the result will be done. Settlement will be done likely. But there is some initial glitches, technical glitches, for which Gujarat Cooperative Federation representative has written to RBI. Please postpone this till these things are ironed out. But it is going to be a path-breaking thing, because same day funds will go to the corporate. And let us avail, and wherever these bank branches are there, let us avail that opportunity. And quality of customer service, when institutions get structured, streamlined, responsive, and mostly there is no information asymmetry. And in terms of risk and return, there is not much difference. Where you do go as a depositor or as a borrower, wherever customer services, the residual is customer is the determining factor. Luckily, Banking Ombudsman Madam said there is happy situation in Odisha, and Chamber is more concerned with the borrower accounts, not on the deposit accounts. So that is being redressed in time. And the happy news is that Central Processing Grievance Redressal and Administration that CPGRM, part of Minister of Personnel, Public Grievances and Pension, they are doing it. They have reviewed the other ministries. Department of Financial Services, which is the core authority for the banking system, banking, insurance and financial system, regulating. They have got a better rating this in the August also. But it is the cases through CPRMS which has gone to DFS, how it is resolved. The quality of resolution and the time taken. But these are the cases which come to banks, which come to RBI, to Ombudsman, to other channels. But this one indication that it is improving. And in August, Indian Overseas Bank from DFC report got the first one. And Bank of India, our Bank of India friends are there. They are continuously second in the top is second for last 3 months. This is through the CPGRMS from the ministry side. But at micro level, at our field level, we have to, whatever little possible, do improvement in customer service. One is dispensation of customer service, and another is knowing our rights and responsibilities. The complaints should also be genuine, not because of any misinformation. So I think we have, with a little pause, I have, because of this technical constraint, I have flagged out what are the areas where you can focus, because Manoj Prusti has asked me that in the initial lesson you say, we will deliberate on this, so that we come closer and jointly and sometimes conjointly we can make our efforts in whatever capacity we have and whatever knowledge and wisdom we have, so that we take our state to Vikasit Odisha by 2036. That is the tagline for this Zoom it. So all the best for that. Okay, it says, God will not give you the ability to dream without giving the ability to realize it. Since we have dreamt of Vikasit Odisha 2036, let us hope through our ability we will realize it. All the best. Congrats and thanks to, and all the best for this maiden venture of Utkal Chamber of Commerce. Thank you.